Okay, everybody, thank you for coming. Great day to be a Beaver. Just want to remind everybody about cell phones. If you please put those on quiet mode quick. Thank you. The media, we have 3 wireless mics. If you could just please let me know if you have a question. We have a couple of our students and Hank here. We'll get you the mics. I'll point so you guys don't step on each other on any questions. Just a reminder, it is a media event, so please keep the questions to the media today. Thank you. Afterwards, we'll have a couple players available. David Morris and Jake Luton will be available in the Players Lounge, which is right down the hall here, so if any media want to chat with those 2 student athletes, more than welcome to. And one other thing, media, please introduce yourselves first time you have the mic so we can kind of put a name, face, that sort of thing. So with that, I'd like to introduce Vice President of Oregon State University and Director of Athletics, Scott Barnes.
Thank you. Thank you. So there's a pep rally scheduled for today. I just didn't know it was going to be during the press conference. So with that, is it a great day to be a Beaver? Absolutely. Let me thank a few people who were so helpful along the way in this journey. Certainly, and you'll hear from him momentarily, our President Ed Ray for his sage advice along the way and support. Appreciate him. Dan Bartholomew, our Deputy Athletic Director and Sports Supervisor for football, along with us the whole way. Thank you for your support. And certainly DHR and Glenn Sugiyama for organizing this journey that we've been on over a period of time. Also, as we went through the process, several former players and some coaches and some other colleagues for their advice and thoughts as we move forward. And certainly can't forget about Beaver Nation and their outpouring of free advice along the way. A passionate, unbelievably passionate fan base we have. And at times like this, the care factor really shows, and our Beaver Nation did a wonderful job of showing how much they cared and ultimately supporting our decision. Let me talk to you just a bit about the process. This was unique as we think back. What unfolded mid-season put us in a really peculiar situation, but it also gave us an opportunity. And that opportunity was a chance to cast a much wider net than we might have normally cast without a protracted period of time. We were able to assess the landscape very quickly, and we're very pleased with the interest level of our position. We then moved on with access in mind. Those we were accessible to were coordinators first, and we were able to meet with them fairly early on in the process, even during the season. This was a bit of a hurry up and wait process because although our offensive and defensive coordinators around were accessible, sitting head coaches were not. So after interviewing coordinators, we continued to evaluate the landscape and assess the landscape, and then commenced as soon as the final game was played this past weekend, Saturday and Sunday. We started again in earnest. Let me tell you that one of the first individuals we interviewed in the process was Jonathan Smith. And from that point in time, Jonathan Smith became the benchmark for which we would compare others to. In the end, Tuesday night, we came back and sat with Jonathan for 2 reasons. One was to reaffirm what we already knew and to have a little deeper conversation in various areas, and ultimately offering him the position. That was an emotional time for Jonathan and myself. And when you think about Jonathan and you get to know him, the things you'll learn about him is that he has a bit of a tenacity to him. He is incredibly authentic. He's got grit. He's got unparalleled passion for this place. As I spoke to our student athletes and introduced Jonathan this morning, the one thing I told them was that understand who is before you. This is a man that won a championship, a conference championship here. He knows how to do it, and he knows how to do it the right way. The qualities we're looking for in a coach included the base, incredible integrity and high ethical standards, an incredible motor, and those things were very apparent. And as you think about those that Jonathan has worked for, the incredible pedigree that he has, having been tutored by the likes of Coach Peterson, Erickson, Riley, and others, the pedigree is something that we were very impressed with. Why? Because in the end, that pedigree has grown a young, heralded football player from Oregon State into one of the top offensive coordinators and young head coaches in America. And with that, I can tell you I'm unbelievably excited about the next chapter in Beaver football history. And with that, let me introduce to you, for a few more words, our president, Ed Ray.
Those of you who know me know that it's not coincidentally that people typically introduce me by inviting me to add a few more words. It's wonderful to be here. Good morning. I want to welcome Candace and Robert and Bella and Charlie. I think we have a few potential scene stealers here, so you'll want to keep a close eye on them as well. They're wonderful, wonderful young people. This is just an incredible day for all of Beaver Nation. Scott talked about my sage advice. I think if you probe that, you would find out that one of my greatest contributions is, like most couch potatoes, to keep my sage advice to myself and let the people who know what they're doing do their job. I'm very excited for all of us, for OSU football, for Beaver Nation, our athletics program, the university. This is just a great day for all of us. I think it's obvious to us, all of us who've been involved in this process, that we found the perfect person at the perfect moment to be coach here at Oregon State University. Jonathan's a proven winner. For those who doubt it, you need to look back only at the Fiesta Bowl in 2001, when the Beavers prevailed over Notre Dame 41-9, and Jonathan was named the offensive MVP. You know, I'm conflicted sometimes about the value of words. As an academic, I believe that words do matter. But as an administrator and someone who has to get things done, I also understand that talk is cheap. You got to produce results, and Jonathan is proven in the past that he can deliver results. I think he can connect with the players and all of Beaver Nation, but he knows what it takes to get to the very pinnacle of success in college football, and I think he's got the vision and the capability to help us to get back there. In other contexts, we talk about the fact that our graduates are the most important contribution we make to the future. It is not acceptable to be mediocre in the classroom. It is not acceptable to be mediocre on the field of competition. We strive for excellence in everything we do. And we need to be real with ourselves. Look at where we are. What do we expect going forward? What I expect us to move to very quickly is an understanding by anyone who comes here to compete with us to appreciate this is our house. And I've said it before, if you come here and don't bring your A game, we're going to hand your butt to you. And we have someone who knows how to do that. So I'm very excited that we have Jonathan here. I know it's wonderful for him to have this opportunity to come back. And we're all going to be in there helping in any way we can and watching some wonderful change occur in this program. You've seen it elsewhere in our athletics program. We have a number of teams that are doing wonderfully and have in the recent past, and we need to get back there with respect to football as well. Now, as much as I know you really like listening to me, let me introduce the coach of Oregon State University football, Jonathan Smith. And before I let Jonathan share his observations with you, we have a little ceremonial moment here.
Don't worry, you don't have to put the helmet on.
Yeah,
Well, it is great to be home. You know, it is an honor to be the head football coach at a university that I care so deeply about. It is an honor to be here standing in front of you. This past 24 hours is really, it has reaffirmed to me why I got into this profession. The outpour of text and calls from former teammates and players and people of this Beaver Nation and community of Corvallis and the state of Oregon, it reminded me of all these relationships that have been built now 20 years ago in this town. And I remember when I was in this town, it began to say I wanted to be a football coach because some of the experiences I was having as a player, I wanted to continue that as a football coach. Some of the relationships that I built through playing football at a university like this is really why I wanted to do that. And so the outpouring of texts and calls and reconnecting with some of them, I couldn't get back to all of them. It just reaffirmed to me why I wanted to do this. And now I'm sitting here in front of you guys at my dream job, in my dream town, at my dream school. Yep. I got to do some thank yous, especially starting with these guys next to me, President Ray, Scott Barnes, Dan, Glenn Sugiyama. You guys have been phenomenal through this process. I thought the whole thing was first class. These guys came and did meet with me early in this process and then allowed me to finish my job at where I was, and I appreciated that. I could stay focused on that. They kept me abreast of where it was at, but it wasn't overwhelming in any way, a distraction. These guys were first class, top notch, and I can't thank you enough for that. I do want to thank my family sitting down here. Candace, my wife, been married for 15 years. We talked about this day coming. And our first 2 years of that marriage was sitting right here in Corvallis as a graduate assistant, so she's coming home as well. My son Robert, Bella, Charles climbing all over the place. Appreciate you guys. My mom has been able to make it here today. And how about that? Today's her birthday, November 3rd. When I first did this list and started wanting to think about all the people I had to thank, it was just going to be impossible. All the people in this town and have been impactful on me throughout my lifetime. But I'd be remiss about mentioning a few of these, and so I want to thank some other people. It's going to start with Chris Peterson. 6 years together, gave me an opportunity at Boise State, brought me over to the University of Washington. Really teached me how to build a championship team, and it started with building a championship culture. The guy is an elite teacher, elite football coach. I'll always be indebted to that man. My growth as a coach and as a teacher and as a friend and as a human being is all so much better from my time spent with him. He means the world to me. Nick Holt gave me my first opportunity as a full-time job at the University of Idaho. And I'll always be indebted to him for that. Robin Pflugrad gave me my first opportunity to be an offensive coordinator at the University of Montana. Took a shot at a guy, and those jobs are not easy to get, to be hired as a coordinator when you had not done it. He believed in me, gave me an opportunity. I'll always be grateful for him. Mark Vaught was a good friend of mine, went to this school, always been a mentor and an encourager. And his advice through tough times meant so much to me. Mitch Barnhart, athletic director back in the day when I was here, and has continued that relationship throughout. Great advisor, someone I lent on and continue to lean on. I appreciate him. And then, of course, my last two of my coaches, right? My coaches. going to start with Mike Riley because he's the one who gave me this opportunity. Vividly remember it with Mike Riley. Came up here on a recruiting visit, and he said, hey, I'm going to give you an opportunity to walk on, but you'll be treated just like a scholarship player. You'll get opportunities just like a scholarship player in regards to competing. He kept his word, and history played out. He really laid the foundation for my understanding of football knowledge, schematics, and how you evaluate talent and use talent. I'll always be indebted to him. Such a good man, a dear friend to this day. And then Dennis Erickson, right? Dennis Erickson, some of the best years of my life here as well of winning games. Dennis Erickson really taught me what it's about to be a true competitor. And you're not going to back down to anyone or any program in any way. You're going to go out and compete. And I can vividly remember, and I told the guys just a minute ago, he walks into a room, right? Mike Riley goes to the Chargers. He walks into that first team meeting room. He starts flashing around a national championship ring and says, why not here? Why not? We can get this done right here. And that was an echoed message to these guys that I met with at 10 o'clock. So those guys have been crucial to my development. Mike Riley and Dennis Erickson have been phenomenal, dear friends, and I learned so much from those guys, and I will to do so. OSU fits me, and I fit OSU. In regards to the town, the place to raise some kids, the place to go to school, and again, beyond just being a student athlete, be involved in a community. The state of Oregon fits me. I've been in the Northwest for now 15 some odd years. This is a great place. I always travel back here, and I'm so excited to start to raise a family at this place and turn a football program into something special. OSU is a spot that's dear to my heart, and I don't hold it lightly to stand in front of you and more or less the front porch of the university in one of the biggest jobs in the state of Oregon, especially at this place. It is an honor to sit here and be able to represent this university in a way of integrity, with accountability, and competitiveness, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to go out and compete. We're going to do it the right way. We can establish a culture where these kids, school is important to them. School is going to be a part of their lives throughout. But also we're going to go out and compete and win some football games, because that's really why I'm here. And so again, this place fits me. I know how to sell this place in regards to recruiting. Very confident when I go in and sit in a room with a mom or a prospective student athlete, I can genuinely tell them what it is like and how it looks to get it done, because I've done it, and it can get done again. And I've lived it, and I've walked those dorm room halls, and I've gone to class on campus, and I've worked out in this building. It's been done, and it can be done again. I think there's sometimes the slogans sound really cool, and recruiting pitches can be really artful. And we'll have some of those, but when you look in my eye and see how it means to me, I believe I can sell this place. And at the end of the day, it can continue to sell itself the more people continue to look into it. And so I feel very confident on the recruiting end. The other piece on the recruiting end for it, I'm from Southern California. That's going to be a heavy base of recruiting. I've been in this conference for the last 4 years. I know what it looks like to transition, change a culture, and win a championship as a coach, and obviously as a player. Very confident I've got what it takes, a vision for what it needs to look like. I've lived it, I've coached it, and now we need to go get it done. So honored to be here, so excited. And again, this place fits me. This is home to me, and let's go Beavs.
I guess for all three of you, Lindsay Schnell, USA Today, sorry. First, Scott and Ed, what was it about his interview that impressed you so much? I'm guessing it was super detailed. And then, Jonathan, can you speak to how you prepared for that interview? Like you said, dream job, even though you brushed aside questions when that opening first came up when you were up in Seattle, were you thinking in the back of your head, I'm going to be ready to crush this?
So in terms of the interview, it didn't hurt that Jonathan vividly provided a scenario about walking into a recruit's home with a polished Pac-10 championship ring on and a recipe how to get there again. That didn't hurt him a bit. Let's back up a little bit. I didn't know Jonathan Smith. I knew the legend. I knew that Jonathan, and I knew the record of him being one of the most decorated players that we've ever had in our history. But I didn't know Jonathan, so I was anxious to learn about him and to see him eye to eye. And one of the first things that struck me was a coach that had an authenticity and a grit to him that fit this place so well. Now, you think about all the things that go into selecting a head coach, and Jonathan is listed several, I've listed several, but it starts with the person and the leadership capacity. And I was so impressed with his passion, his conviction for Oregon State and what could be done, his plan, but it starts with the man, and I was very impressed.
Yeah, I guess if I could add something quickly, it would be, if you think about it, part of what I heard about Jonathan, because I came here after Jonathan had left, was that among his distinctive qualities, he had a certain degree of autonomy as a quarterback has to have on the playing field. And he didn't make mistakes. He made really good judgments in the moment, so he had a certain degree of autonomy. He took it and he was accountable for making difficult decisions. And as an offensive coordinator with Chris Peterson, I think he's had some of that same autonomy and ability to make decisions. And obviously, he made very good decisions. So I think it's critical that we have a coach who knows how to make solid decisions, wants the responsibility for making hard decisions, and is willing to hold himself and others accountable for getting results. Because as I said earlier, in some sense, talk can be cheap when you got a job to get done. This is a guy who I think can get a job done and in fact welcomes the opportunity to demonstrate that he can.
I guess echoing your question there on my preparation for this and outlining this plan, it was it did mean a lot to me because it wasn't hard to look at it. When we prepared, it was about the middle of the year. I can't remember the exact dates as we played this out, but I had a couple of days to put some outline and the vision of what I saw this place, the strengths and how we would sell and continue to recruit to this place. I also made mention of the current team as it was going on because I felt like the current team had opportunities and is not that far away. And I firmly believe that, and I just told those guys that at 10 o'clock. And so preparing for this, I knew exactly what it needs to look like. I wanted to make it look like that, and I don't think it's that far away.
Jonathan, this is Ryan Thorburn with the Register Guard in Eugene. Obviously, when you were a player, Oregon and Oregon State were both playing at a high level last week. The Civil War was pretty lopsided. How much work do you have to do to catch up? And the second part to that, coming from Washington, with what you guys built there and with what Mike Leach has going on in Pullman, is there room for 4 really good teams in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, there's work to get done, and there's work to get done in really every place and to be able to sustain something like that. I do think that this program is not that different than every program in this conference. I think this conference is the best conference in America, and so the competitiveness of this conference week in and week out, and I think you saw that within some games, some teams rose up and won, where you got to bring your A game week in and week out. So I just don't see the difference between all 12 schools being that far apart. I'm excited about the opportunity to get with these guys. I'll continue to learn more about them. There's no question everybody's got some work to get done, and I'm excited to do it.
Are you wearing your Pac-10 championship ring?
I am. Yeah.
These kids have been through a lot this year, and
Yeah.
you yourself went through that type of transition, although this was an unconventional situation. What's your first priority in dealing with that?
Yeah. I think any time transition takes place, it's unsettling. It creates a sense of chaos and a sense of insecurity. We talked about it at 10 o'clock, and I think it's going to be vital is that we can begin to know these kids and to build some trust. Because these guys, again, have been recruited by different coaches. Some coaches have been up and out the door. Different things have taken place. We got to bring some trust to the room. Because the culture really drives the behaviors of what's going to take place. And so trust is the foundation of that. And we'll do a lot of work to gain that trust from these kids.
Orlando Sanchez, KGW-TV. Coach, this has kind of been rock bottom for a lot of Beavers fans. What do you tell them after what has gone on this this season and specifically last week?
You know, I think the circumstances of really last season and last week are very unique and very tough, and that's the reality. I will say I give credit to Corey Hall and how he operated the first couple of games. It had those guys a new belief, a new fresh system, and they were close. And that's why, going off of what I see on tape, the thing is close. Again, you go through something as dramatic as what these kids did. It doesn't surprise me to have some ups and downs. But the reality, we need to bring in some stability, and I bring that. And with that stability, I believe we can continue to progress.
Jonathan Travis, came to on KVL in Eugene. Corey Hall brought some stability in a really difficult time for this team, as you mentioned. Have you had the chance to talk with him yet, and do you know if you plan on retaining him on your coaching staff?
Yeah, I have not had the opportunity to talk to him yet. I plan on doing that in the next day or two. I do, again, commend him for what he did in a very difficult situation. I've heard a lot of good things. I've never had the chance to meet him, and so I look forward to doing that.
I guess we're on. Jonathan, Nick Krupke from Fox 12 in Portland. I know you were in the thick of it with the Huskies this year, but when Gary left, it shocked seemingly everybody. As an alum, how did that affect you? And maybe did you at some of that point you think, boy, I hope they maybe reach out to me?
Yeah, I was very surprised with Gary. I've met Gary a couple of times and think very highly of him. So when that did take place, it did cross my mind as maybe this is time. Maybe this is the time to do this and go after it. Again, with the way the search was dealt or held, I was able to function and continue to stay focused, but it was in the back of my mind for a long time.
Hi, Jonathan. Brendan Slaughter, BeaversEdge.com. Just when Beaver fans think of the name Jonathan Smith, obviously it's the Fiesta Bowl, that great season. What is kind of your plan, and what makes you think you can kind of bring those moments back to Oregon State and back to the level of success when you were here as a player?
Right. You know, I as a player, we had a mix of personalities in the locker room. And I think we can continue to do that. I think this place is unique in regards to where you can draw your players from. It all comes back to the culture that was created there at the time. And that's for the guys in the building so far. We're going to add a few. And so it's going to start with that. And that's how you get things started, is create a culture of excellence. And that's what we're doing from day one.
Jonathan, Danny Moran with the Oregonian. As far as putting together a staff, what's your time frame? You mentioned you haven't spoken with Corey Hall yet. When do you hope to have your full staff established?
Right. We're in the process of that, and we've been talking to some different people. You'll be hearing some names here in the next few days, but I'm not going to put an exact timetable on anything. The big piece on who we hire is men of character, of integrity. You know, I kind of describe it as low ego, high output. That's what I'm looking for. Of guys that with low ego, ready to come in here and have some compassion and work with our kids, held to accountability, but also obviously got to deliver.
And you said the team is not that far away. Where are you not that far away from, and how soon do you think you can get to what?
Well, yeah, I just, from one side of the ball, obviously we've game planned that defense, and there is some good players that are running around and doing some good things. You know, we got a couple bad breaks. We've had some injuries on that end. I don't see that side of the ball that far away. There's some good players on offense. The running back was good, had the injury to the quarterback, and so there's some things that created some issues, and then with the coaching change, it just was a unsurmountable situation.
Amy Schwartz, Beaver Blitz. How soon will you get out on the road and get those recruits back committed and things like that?
Yeah, we're looking to do that. At the earliest, it'd be Sunday, but Monday for sure to be out on the road, because there are some players that are committed. There are some players that have drawn some interest here in the last 24 hours, and so we hope to get out on the road at least by Monday.
Angie Machado, Beaver Blitz. Beaver fans are, obviously, with you coming back home, there's talk of several other former players, teammates of yours, that are doing well in the coaching ranks. Any chance that we see a few more former Beavers?
That's for sure a consideration, and there's a bunch of guys out there doing really, really well. And I think there's a bunch of guys out there doing really, really well because they started their foundation at this place, and the things they had learned and experienced here, just like me. So, yeah, there might be a guy or two that are part of it, and we'll see how it plays out.
Haley Lewis, KEZI in Eugene. A lot of players or fans want to know exactly more of your personality, how you are as a coach. I know every coach has a slogan. So what type of coaching style do you have, and how are you going to translate with those players? And maybe a go-to slogan.
Yeah, I don't got a go-to slogan at this point, but I will say I coach and I'm trying to be authentic because that's what I appreciated as a player. It's just, being yourself. And I'll be saying, my 2 college head coaches were authentic. They did it in drastically different ways. Their personalities were definitely different, but they were authentic. So that's my style.
Jonathan Danuthman from the All-American. How's it going?
Good.
At what point in your career did you know that you wanted to be the coach at Oregon State, and at what point did you think that was possible?
Right. I always wanted to come back to Oregon State. I didn't always think about being the head coach because there's a lot of things that came with it. I will say, as I continued to be in this profession, the thought of being a head coach at a place that really means so much to you, that began to grow on me. And then being in this conference the last 4 years as an offensive coordinator and, having a pretty close eye on what was taking place at Oregon State, I started to envision being the head coach here, and that's really when I was ready to do it.
What was your conversations with Chris over the past week, 36 hours, 24 hours?
Yeah, he was unbelievable through this whole. He was well aware of what was taking place. He's very supportive, and he gave me some good wisdom in regards to things to consider as I was considered in this. And so he's been awesome, was supportive, and all the way to the end here, last 24 hours.
Coach AJ McCord with Coin 6 in Portland. As you're kind of getting into the thick of recruiting, what are some of the biggest selling points you're going to be talking to these recruits about, especially outside the state of Oregon?
Right. I think you sell the place and the people of this place for sure. In regards to the authenticity of this place, people that means so much to them. You sell the college life that is unbelievable that I've experienced, the best college town in America, let alone the Pac-12 conference, and those are the starting points for me, for sure. I've lived it. I've been in it. Then again, we'll sell some of the offensive schemes that we'll be running, the defensive schemes that we'll be running, and we're excited.
Ken Go with the Oregonian. You mentioned you're going to sell schemes. Can you tell us sort of where you're going to go with that?
Right. Yeah. Well, I can tell you in broad pictures, schemes are going to start with the players you got and the personnel you got. And so we're going to take a long look at what we have and what fits best. The type of guys we're going to hire on the offensive, defensive side will have a variety of background, and then we'll run from there.
Have you got a chance to meet with any members of the team yet? And kind of what is that, if you have, what have you kind of heard from them, and what's that experience been like, just kind of talking, getting to know them so far?
I've met with the group here before we came in here at 10 o'clock. We had a team meeting, and it was really good. We started about what this place means to me, told them all about that, told them my story, how I got here, and then we had some back and forth, and I asked them on what they thought of the place and what needs to be fixed and what's really good about the place. So that's the extent of what I've done with the players so far, and I'm obviously going to do some more moving forward.
Scott, I noticed that on the press release you guys put out that Pat Casey was quoted and talked about Jonathan. I heard through the grapevine that you talked to Pat a lot about what he thought you guys needed in a football coach, and I just wondered, as the single most successful coach here, like what advice he gave you?
Appreciate the question. Actually, when we brought our search firm in, Glenn in, I had him meet with Wayne Tinkle, Scott Ruick, and Pat Casey individually. And I wanted to do that because I wanted nobody better to convey and articulate how special this place is and why, and how you can win and how you can be successful. And so Pat Casey was great, and he had known Jonathan a bit, as had Tink at Montana. So that was where I started. And in terms of advice along the way, really just making sure that as we move forward and develop that profile, we understood how this place was special, that Glenn, as he organized our month or so, that he understood this place as well. And, Pat has a lot of intangibles. He is a model program, and he's a model leader for that program. And so there's always something you'll learn from Pat Casey when you sit down with him.
Jonathan, Ronald Clark from KZI 9 News. You talked about recruiting incoming students, but obviously your recruiting starts here with these players now. What's kind of your pitch to the players who are here that are eligible for the NFL draft to keep them on the roster?
Right. Well, first I got to, get to know them a little bit more before I get any kind of detailed conversations with that. They're definitely going to be. We're going to re-recruit the kids that are seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, and then incoming freshmen. We're going to be recruiting them all, getting to know them all. And so, again, I go back to need to establish some trust between the both parties needs to take place. And so we're going to make efforts to get that started very, very quickly.
Jonathan, Eric Patterson, KGW. Obviously, you're very passionate about this school and probably feel very fortunate that with this crazy chess game going on with all these positions, all these names flying around, what do you make of all this craziness right now?
Yeah, it's definitely been crazy. I just know that timing's never perfect, but sometimes it is, and it was really perfect for me, for sure.
Given this is your first time as a head coach, do you envision being the play caller, or do you envision handing those duties to whoever your offensive coordinator ends up being?
Right. At this point, no, I do not envision being the play caller. I do see myself being a little involved offensively. I've got a background. I've been doing it the last 4 years in this league. I've been doing it for a long time, so I'm going to have some contributions to it, but I do not see myself calling the plays.
Two more. You mentioned, obviously, Mike Riley and Dennis Erickson. What role do you envision either of them having, either with your staff or consulting or any capacity with the program?
Yeah, I haven't got that far with those guys. Yeah, I did talk to Dennis a couple of days ago, and we started reminiscing how about we used to just yell at each other from the sideline to the huddle, and I don't know if that's going to work anymore.
And Scott, do you know at this point, as far as the salary pool for assistants, if it will be similar, more or less, compared to what it was for this past year?
Thanks for the question, Danny. So you think about what needs to improve. First, the leader, and we got, without a shadow of a doubt, the right leader. So now you put the resource around that leader to be successful, and that includes, as we think about, and we've done over the last several months, gap analysis, understanding where we sit against our peers in the Pac-12 and beyond, and salary pool for assistant coaches is a big deal. We are going to make a mighty investment in increasing the salary pool for assistant coaches, and one that enables Jonathan to get exactly who he wants.
Scott, you mentioned at the beginning during your opening statement that you had a plethora of free advice from fans via social media. Considering the situation with Tennessee recently, Twitter has kind of become a firestorm now during coaching searches. How aware were you of social media after the Tennessee story broke out?
It's the question of the day, isn't it? And it really you tend to think about what happened there and how that might reshape searches and where we go. Certainly aware, you couldn't help to be aware of that circumstance. Unfortunately, as we went through the process, our prescribed game plan was, for the most part, good. And you think about searches and how dynamic and fluid they are. We were pretty disciplined in where we went. One of the challenges for us, quite frankly, some of the media outlets that had erroneous information early, particularly, we had to continue to conversation with there's a difference between reporting something and suggesting something. I'm not talking about the suggestions at all. That's part of what we do. But when something's reported, now we've got to go back to all our candidates and say not true and put those fires out. That was and continues to be in the landscape of searches a real challenge.
My way of dealing with complaints was to refer them to Scott.
And yes, he did.
Scott and Coach, actually, I know you guys mentioned the coaching search and how you're still on that, but where does Corey Hall fit into this equation? Will he get the opportunity to be part of your staff?
So obviously that's going to be, as an athletic director, that'll be the one thing I want to make sure our new coaches have is complete autonomy. We've hired them in an incredibly important leadership position, and by doing so, we trust in their decision making. And so that opportunity will be Jonathan's to figure out. I will say, as Jonathan said earlier, I can't thank Corey enough for stepping in the middle of a very unique and difficult situation and doing so well and caring so much about our student athletes. And we had that conversation again last night. So
Yeah, adding to that, I would, again, agree with what Corey did for this place the last 6-8 weeks was phenomenal in a very difficult situation. I look forward to speaking with him, but no decisions have been made.
Jonathan, I can appreciate, you're an alum, you love this school, you love this place, and you had a lot of success here, but this is a really hard job now. A lot of people think it's one of the toughest jobs in America. The landscape of the Pac-12 has changed a lot since you played, but you seem really convinced that you can win here. Why is that?
Well, I've been in this league the last 4 years, and I've seen how competitive this league is in and week out. The landscape has changed, facilities begin to change, but it's really the players that are recruited to this side of the country are very similar. I see the schools, we travel to them when we played road games. I see it as very similar. And so I think it's a very competitive league, and I think each school is pretty competitive amongst each other. You see swings all the time in this league if you go over stretches of 5 to 10 years, and I'm very confident that this place can have another swing, and we're going to head up.
Jonathan, Chantel Jennings, the All-American. You've had a chance to work really closely with Chris Peterson the last 6 years. He's a guy who, from a media standpoint, is really good at keeping people at a distance a little bit, so we don't get a chance to know a lot about him and his day-to-day. But for you, what do you take most from him in terms of running a program and a team?
Yeah. I think he's elite, again, at setting a direction and a vision for a program. I go back to, again, creating an elite culture is the starting point, and he does that. He works at it day in and day out. That is something for sure that we will bring here in regards to the culture that's created, not just on the field either, but off the field, and the expectations and the standards that kids are held to under his leadership. I mean, I could go on and on about the guy because, again, 6 years with him, but for sure, he creates a clear direction for everybody. Everyone's headed in the right, same direction, and then he works at his culture very hard.
Jonathan, Nick Krupke from Fox 12. She's not here now. I think the MVP, though, the presser, has been your wife.
With working with those, yep.
How much has she helped been a backbone to you, been moving from Idaho to Montana, Boise State to Seattle, back to here?
Yeah, she has been on board on all the moves, and we got married, and she had been living in Southern California her whole life, and came up to Corvallis, and then really fell in love with this place, and really started to fall in love with the Northwest. And yeah, we have circled the Northwest in all our moves, and now we're back to square one, which is exactly where we want to be. She does a great job with these kids, and yet this job / any coaching job nowadays, you got to have an elite wife, partner along with you, and I definitely got an elite one.
Jonathan, Gary Horowitz with the Statesman Journal. Welcome back. I know you were here when this became an elite program, and you've only met briefly with the players, but a lot of them were pretty down late in the year. Do you believe that it's going to take a while to get them to believe that the program can be something like it was a long time ago?
It's tough for me to forecast how they'll respond because I don't know them that well. I do know that we're going to work hard and battle each day. And again, the push to continue to trust each other, establish trust amongst the players and coaches, and again, hold each other on both ends accountable, I think it can move very fast.
Jonathan, Kerry Eggers, Portland Tribune. 15 years ago, the facilities were much different than they are today. How good are they here? What needs to be done? What do you think are the priorities facility-wise to help you win?
Well, I think they're really good here. And, we talked about this through the process and the interviews and things, and the day-to-day aspect for the student-athlete here, I think, is awesome. This place is first class. You've got a short distance to 2 awesome practice fields. The weight room is state-of-the-art, and it's right there. The indoor. You go to some other places, you got to travel amongst, to get to different spots, to the indoor facility, what are the weight room. The other piece I think is a huge advantage is we're amongst the campus right here. We're not removed, we're not distance, and I think that's a part of the culture of the student, not just the student athlete, but getting around the students. It's easily accessible around here. So I think it's really good. We're always going to push forward. Listen to Scott's vision when I talked to him over the last month. That has been fun to hear about. And this guy's a visionary, and he puts his hard hat on and works, and he's put on continued results.
Matt Rockwell, Barstool Beavs, Barstool Sports. What's your plan to bring back that 2001 Fiesta Bowl team swagger back?
Yeah. Well, I say we definitely had some swagger, but I think we had 20-some-odd penalties in that Fiesta Bowl. So we're not trying to bring that kind of swagger back.
Understandable.
Yeah. I did hear from a bunch of those guys, though, and I go back to the memories made with them, and we had some characters and a bunch of fun and a bunch of competitive kids. And so we're gonna get back to being around some characters, but guys in a very, very good way.
For Jonathan and Scott, can you guys, Jonathan, you just kind of mentioned Scott's vision. Can you guys both just kind of elaborate just briefly on that and what you mean by kind of that vision that you guys kind of talked about during the process?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So when we think again about all that we have to do, we're going to do it in a strategic way. And so we have, in addition to comprehensive strategic plan we're working on, we have a facilities master plan that process launched a month or so ago and will be completed in the summer. And the primary goals of that facilities master plan process is, one, a vision for the next 10 years in each of our sports, and then a deep dive on priority projects that will ultimately turn into real projects. And that includes, as you think about the rising tide that lifts all boats, football, that includes jumping into it immediately in terms of what the needs are. Certainly, the west side is one of those, a potential refresh of the strength and conditioning center and other needs. But we love the progress that's been made. This building sets us apart in some ways. Jonathan's alluded to some of the other areas, but there's always a next step, and we will plan for that next step. We are actually planning for that next step right now.
Bob Lundeberg, Corvallis Gazette-Times. Jonathan, who are some of those former Oregon State teammates that have reached out to you over the last 24 hours, and what have those messages been?
Yeah, well, I was showing these guys, I could pull my phone out. I got over 200 text messages right now. Now, they're not all from former players and whatnot, but Ken Simonton, T.J. Hushmanzada, Marty Maurer, Chris Gibson, Bill Swancutt, Derek Anderson, Steven Jackson, and I could continue on, but those guys are special to me, man. You know, and we had some special times, but there's a short list to get you started.
Coach, how important is it to have that Beaver culture coming back together with you coming as the head coach again?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And, you know, again, starting with some of the former players here, because we've had some really good players go on and not just leave this place, but go on to the NFL and do some really good things. And it's not just about the guys that went on to the NFL. We've had some really good guys go on in the business world and have some great success. And so I think it's vital to bring those guys back and continue to educate our current guys that it's beyond football. It's beyond just trying to get to the NFL. And here's a bunch of guys that have come here to Corvallis and gotten this done and are living big-time lives, whether it's on or off the field.
You mentioned having a recruiting base in Southern California. Where else do you envision going on from a national standpoint, whether Texas or Florida or different aspects?
I see the recruiting footprint of for us is in the conference, in the states of the conference of the West Coast, and going over to Hawaii continually for sure. I think that Texas is not too far, but at the same time, you continue to fly over states where there's a bunch of kids you're flying over to get there. And so I'm not here to say that we are not going to recruit outside of the Pac-12 footprint, but we are definitely going to start there in that footprint, and then we will start more by car than by plane, because we're going to be by car in this state, into the Northwest, and get ourselves into California, and then continue to expand out from there.
Jonathan, Mike Riley told me a story one time about the first time you guys ever met. You know, you told him you wanted to be a college coach, and so I'm sure that in the whole time you've had a relationship with him and with Erickson, you picked their brains about what it takes to be successful. What have both of them told you about what it takes to win here?
They both, lean on the experience that I had here and lean on what it took in regards to the type of players, the type of coaches, the type of culture that was here and was established, and lean on those experiences to draw you forward in what takes place now. Both those guys have been awesome and supportive. And again, we'll continue to stay in touch with those guys as it goes along, but both of them have been really encouraging to remember the days. Awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
That'll work.
Good job.
Yeah, that'll work.
Good job.